Hello, it is I. Now, supercars and hypercars are the most prestigious cars you'd ever see on the road. They're packed full of expensive materials and composites you'd never find on a cheap everyday car. However, you'd be surprised to know that a lot of these supercars actually share parts with ordinary cars. Cars that you'd see every single day on the road. And today I decided to compile 10 examples into this video. So here are 10 normal cars which share parts with expensive supercars. Now before getting into this video... Yuwan, you never guess what? What? You know that person who's watching the video right now?
Who? This Donny?
Yeah. Did you know they haven't pressed a like button yet?
You sneaky bugger.
Yeah, this is very cringy.
Yeah, I know.
4,000 likes is the target as per usual. Liking the video is free and it helps out so much more than you can imagine. And seeing as over half of you guys watching right now are not subscribed, make sure to join the family down below. We are on the road to 200k and I love having new faces here on the channel. Thank you very much, and now let's get to the first car, which is the EK9 Honda Civic Type R. The EK9 was brought into production in the late 90s and it was the first ever Honda Civic to receive a Type R variant. It was powered by a B16 engine producing near to 200 brake horsepower. And that in a car that weighed just over a ton meant the car was a ton of fun to drive about. No pun intended. The Type R also came with this distinctive steering wheel, which was not seen in the standard Civic. Now does this wheel look familiar to you? Well, it should do if you're a Ferrari fan, as Ferrari's V12 Grand Tourer, the 550 Maranello, has this exact same steering wheel. This is the wheel of the Honda, and this is the Ferrari's. Honda, Ferrari. Coincidence? I think so. And the really cool thing is that the 550 came out before the EK9 Type R, meaning Honda were the ones who took the steering wheel from a Ferrari and put it into their Civic. How mad is that? Now I'm not 100% sure if it's the exact same wheel with different badges, but come on, they do look near enough identical to one another. The Mazda 323F. The 323F was Mazda's cheap hatchback family car. Not exactly the most exciting car in the world. However, you'd be surprised to know that the 323 shares a feature with quite a prestigious car, as the taillights from this Mazda are the exact same ones found on the Aston Martin DB7. Yep, this V12 luxury Grand Tourer has taillights from a Mazda hatchback. Now you're probably thinking those aren't the same taillights, they're a different shape. Ah well, that's because the Aston's taillights were disguised to look round by the body panels surrounding it. But behind the panels it's the exact same taillight, which is pretty strange to see on a posh British sports car. And not only does the DB7 share taillights from a Mazda, but it also shares another feature from another Mazda. A feature found inside the Aston, because these are the exact same door handles you'd find on a Mazda MX-5. Yep, so the DB7 isn't just some purebred British sports car, it's got some Japanese elements in it too. The Ford Crown Victoria. Ah, the Crown Vic. Arguably the most iconic car ever created. You may recognize them from being police cars in North America, being cabs in New York, or for being unbelievably slow, which is ironic because the engine in this is found in one of the fastest cars in the world. Yep, the V8 from the Ford Crown Victoria was used to power the legendary Koenigsegg CC8S. Of course, it wasn't just a stock motor, it was actually supercharged, producing 655 brake horsepower, breaking a world record in 2002 for being the world's most powerful engine ever put into a production car. Koenigsegg literally took one of the least powerful V8s ever and turned it into the most powerful engine at the time. Now that is a flex. Many different variants of these motors were used throughout the CC lineup until they started making their Regeras, which featured their own homemade Koenigsegg engines. But they had humble beginnings when they started out by using the motor out of a Ford Crown Victoria. So yeah, if you ever get into a New York cab or you get arrested by a cop in a Crown Victoria, just know you're in a slightly slower Koenigsegg. The Rover 416. Now the 416 looks like the slow old miserable car that your nan would drive, and to be fair, it is a slow old miserable car. Yet one of its parts is featured on a car that's fast and exciting, a car that's arguably one of the greatest supercars ever created, the Jaguar XJ220. So what part do these cars share? Their taillights. Yep, Jaguar's fastest production car with a twin turbocharged V6 engine has taillights from an old Rover. Who would have thought? Now I don't think the lights suit the Jaguar too well, I think it looks pretty out of place in my opinion, but it is cool to see recycled parts used in legendary supercars. The Chrysler Sebring. Now the Sebring is Chrysler's mid-size family car made for people who voluntarily eat cauliflower. It came as a sedan, a coupe and a convertible, and a lot of people say that it's the worst car in the world. But surprisingly, one very famous car manufacturer saw potential in it. I mean, not potential in the car, but a feature inside the car, as Ferrari quite liked the infotainment unit in the Sebring, so they decided to use the exact same system in their Ferrari California, except except it was slightly modified as they surrounded it in this brushed aluminium border and placed the Ferrari emblem above it. Now, even though the California was the cheapest Ferrari of the lineup at the time, it's a pretty nice gesture using a cheap family car's infotainment unit in an exotic supercar. So good job Ferrari, you are good people. The Citroen CX. The CX was Citroen's large executive car, which started production in the mid-70s and ended in the early 90s, and it featured many weird and quirky features, but its most notable one was its hydro pneumatic suspension, which provided a very smooth ride. It also had a strange interior with a one-spoke steering wheel, square dials, and weird looking seats. Basically, in short, it was a weird car. But the weirdest thing about the car is that its door mirrors are probably more well known than the car itself. I bet some of you watching haven't even heard of the CX, whereas its door mirrors have been used on many legendary cars, like the Aston Martin DB7, the Virage, the Vantage, the Jaguar XJ220, the Marcos Mantis, the Venturi 400 GT, the Lotus Esprit, the Lotus XL, the TVR Chimera, the TVR S4, and the TVR Griffith. Citroen door mirrors were used in a lot of cars of this era, and surprisingly they suited every single car that they were featured on. So if you ever see a Citroen CX, take a picture of its door mirrors and pretend it's an XJ220 or something, I don't know. The Volkswagen Passat. Now Volkswagen own a lot of car companies as we already know, so it's not much of a surprise to see Volkswagen parts on other cars. However, a lot of these Volkswagen resemblances are found on cheap cars, like your Seats and your Skodas. You'd never expect to see Volkswagen features on something like a Lamborghini, or a Porsche, or even a Bugatti. Yeah, there is one key feature which is shared between the Volkswagen Passat and the multi-million-pound Bugatti Veyron, and it's the key, funny enough, as the Passat, the Veyron, and Chiron share near enough the exact same key. So the key that you start your diesel Passat family car with is the exact same key that you start a quad-turbo 1000 plus brake horsepower hypercar with. How mad is that? And another surprising fact is that Bugatti charge you near to $10,000 for a replacement key. For that money, you could literally get yourself a Volkswagen Passat car. That's just mental. Bugatti are out here acting like Apple, it's mad. The Fiat Punto. Now if you lived in the UK through the late 2000s, you'd know that the Punto was the ultimate chavmobile. You'd see these with Halfords wheel trim and a huge subwoofer blasting drum and bass in the McDonald's car park at 2 in the morning. Chavs cared about their Puntos more than their own children, so I think we've established that it's not the most civilized car in the world. So surely this car won't have its parts used in a classy British supercar. Well, think again, because the headlights of the Punto were used in MG supercar the X-Power XV, and I do say they look pretty good in it. As much as I don't like this Punto, the headlights on it were so cool, and they suit the MG so well. The Rover 45. Earlier I mentioned how the Rover 416 shares its taillights with the Jaguar supercar worth over £250,000, and if you thought that was shocking, then just you wait for this, as this cheap Rover 45 shares its climate control switches with the Pagani Zonda. Yep, this supercar worth way over £250,000, shares its climate control switches with a £500 Rover, and it's not modified in any way. It's the exact same switches and screen, and this climate control featured on all Pagani Zonda road cars, from the 1999 C12 all the way to the 2017 HB Barchetta, which is crazy to know. However, when they stopped making Zondas and they moved to Huayras, they made their own climate control switches which are a million times better looking. The Volkswagen Corrado. The Corrado. One of the most underappreciated cars ever created. It's known for many things, like its active aero and its iconic VR6 engine, but just like the Citroen I mentioned earlier, the most well-known part about this car is probably the door mirrors, as it's featured on the McLaren F1. Yep, McLaren are in no way affiliated with Volkswagen, yet it has the door mirrors of a Corrado. Mad. Also, the F1 shares its taillights with the bus, but that's something a lot of people know nowadays. So despite the McLaren F1 being one of the greatest cars ever created, it shares a lot of parts with much cheaper cars you'd see every single day on the road, and the Corrado just so happens to be one of those stoner cars. Very nice.
And that's the end of the video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you want to see more videos just like this one, then make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. We are trying to hit 200k by the end of this year, so any help would be much appreciated. Also, make sure to leave a comment down below. It helps a lot with the YouTube algorithm, and I try and get to as many of you people as I can. Thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you guys very soon. Until next time, have a good one, guys. Stay safe, stay inside. Until next time, cheers.
My dineros, what I'm out to get. Sombrero, I get hat and then I'm out again. Got an A1 Chica with a drive like a 3 litre. That's what she needs D for, like the outfit.